Okay, I want to read you a definition here quickly before we get started. A paradox is a statement that, despite apparently valid reasoning from true premises, leads to an apparently self-contradictory or logically unacceptable conclusion. A paradox involves contradictory yet interrelated elements that exist simultaneously and persist over time. Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. Today we're talking about the paradox that exists in weight loss. And I wanted to start off with that definition because I know that so many of us are fully aware of what we need to do to lose weight, and yet so many of us have tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and tried some more and tried again and haven't been able to lose weight. And I want to talk about the paradox so that people can start to understand what is it that you're doing or not doing that's causing your weight to remain the same or even, unfortunately, to continue to increase, which is going to lead to other medical health issues down the road. Okay. I have some notes because actually there's a lot I want to say on this topic and I want to make sure I get it right. And the first thing I want to do is help us all to understand what's the paradox that I think I see. And it's that weight loss is seemingly very easy and yet super complex and difficult at the same time. And that it's easy because our bodies work a certain way and there's just a few things that we need to do to make ourselves thinner and healthier. And yet at the same time, we could do the things we were told to do and for some reason not get the results that we were told we would get. Okay. And this is not just my case. This is the case for person after person after person after person after person after person. Why is this happening? So let's look at the possibilities we have. We have people who can eat a lot of carbs and be thin. There are others that are thin but have metabolic disease. Okay. There are others who eat the carbs and gain weight and have metabolic disease. But then there are others that eat the carbs, gain weight, but have no sign of metabolic disease. So the big contradiction there is that how is it possible that someone could be super overweight and yet not have metabolic disease, but you can also have someone who's eating a bunch of carbs and not gaining weight? When we know that overeating on carbs leads to gaining weight. So what's happening there? Okay. Here's the thing. First of all, what I want to say is, if you are what would be considered obese and you have zero metabolic disease and you're fine and happy with your weight and your life and your situation, there's nothing for you to do. There's no changes you need to make. I'm not saying that a healthy, overweight person needs to change anything. So I just want to make that clear. It's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the people who are unhealthy and trying to figure out like what's happening there. Whether you're thin and have metabolic disease, so this could help you, this video can help you, and whether you're overweight and have metabolic disease, I believe this video can help you. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. Okay, so let's go through what I think is happening there. I do believe that the issues related to this has to do with the myths that exist about weight loss. And one of the major myths that we need to look at, and we need to stop telling ourselves this, is that calories in equal calories out, which means that if I eat something and then I work out that amount, it's like if I didn't eat it. That is simply not true. And I'm going to talk to you about why. And I'm not a doctor. And I'm not pretending or claiming to be a doctor. But what I am able to do is help people to understand how misinformation will cause you to believe certain things and act in certain ways and therefore affect you and the people around you in certain ways, right? If you misunderstand what's happening in your body, you will interpret your own behavior as good when it's not good. And that will lead you to do actions that are harmful to yourself. So from a psychological point of view, knowing what you're doing helps you to do the right things. So this is why I'm talking about this, because I've recognized with talking to multiple clients, they don't know what all this information means. And so therefore they move forward making mistake after mistake after mistake and end up on medication after medication when they could have taken actions to change what was happening in their life. That's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm talking about this. So if you eat 100 calories worth of jam, it is not metabolized the same way as if you ate 100 calories worth of butter. And there's a reason for that. Butter is mostly fat. Jam is mostly carbs, although they're both energy sources. So carbohydrates are an energy source, fats are an energy source. They're both energy sources. However, when you eat butter, the insulin response that your body is going to have is closer to zero, versus if you eat jam, the insulin response that your body is going to have is closer to its max. And for that reason, you will metabolize jam in a very different way than you do butter. So what do I mean by that? If I eat butter, it does not necessarily get stored as fat because my insulin didn't spike. Insulin is the hormone that tells your body to put whatever energy that it's processing away as fat. Normally it's doing that because carbohydrates are toxic to our system in high amounts, not in normal amounts, only in high amounts. So if I eat jam, which is carbohydrate, then my insulin is very likely to be spiked, especially because 9 times out of 10, we're going to eat jam on some kind of cracker or bread, which is also carbohydrate. So even though I'm only having, but I think you see where I'm going, right? That 100 grams of jam is probably going to be on something. Same way that 100 grams of butter is going to probably be on something, but it might not be bread. And if it's in my life, it wouldn't be bread. But we're only talking about the jam and the butter at this moment. The jam is going to tell your body to store. It's that basic. Jam causes an insulin spike. Insulin says, oh, there's sugar, I need to store it. It's that basic. Every time you eat any carbohydrate, that's what's happening if it's in a large enough amount. Now, what makes it a large enough amount? The numbers are not 100% guaranteed on that, but it's widely believed and widely understood that if you keep your carbohydrates low, which is where the low carb, high fat movement came in, keeping them low causes your body to use the carbs right away and use the fat right away and not store. And if you keep them ultra low, like in a ketogenic diet, you might even get to the point where you are really burning only ketones, really, and your body is like really using all the sugar, all the fat. So how low you need to keep it will depend on you. The first thing I'm trying to help you understand is that our body does not treat all sources of calories the same way. It treats carbohydrates very differently than it treats fats. Yet both of them are energy sources. So we need to be choosy of which energy source we're going to look towards. Because if we want to lose fat, taking the energy source that causes our body to store fat is a bad idea. Now, the other paradox that comes about is when we're trying to understand. So what happens? Some people can store fat and metabolically not seem to have any issues, and other people have metabolic issues. And it seems like for some reason, and again, we can't explain all of this, but for some people, when they store fat, they're able to create new fat cells. They just seem to have an endless ability to put the sugar away. And so because they can put the sugar away, they don't end up with metabolic issues. This is how I'm understanding. Again, I'm not a doctor. But I get, from my point of view, the question again becomes, A, do you have any metabolic issues? Because if you have metabolic issues, they need to be addressed. B, are you comfortable? Are you comfortable how you're living your life? Are you comfortable with your size? Are you comfortable with what you're trying to accomplish? Psychologically, if I'm uncomfortable, if I'm not happy with my size, if I'm not happy with my ability to play with my kids or to do the activities that I used to like to do, then even if I don't have metabolic issues, I might still be in the scenario where I'm not happy with my life. If you're happy, that's fine. If our body continues to store until it has no more ability to store, then we end up in that pre-diabetes, diabetes situation. Unfortunately, when we're in those stories, because our body has been storing and storing and storing the excess sugar in our body as fat, but now it can't store, what ends up happening is we end up having toxic levels of sugar in our blood. So that when we go to the doctor can see through the blood test, we have too much sugar in our blood. So, what's the answer to that? Well, obviously, we cannot live with too much sugar in our blood. It's toxic. It will kill us. So, up until this point, the answer seems to have been that doctors have given medications to encourage our body to continue to store. So now we have to look at what's happening. My body got to the position where it could no longer store the sugar in my blood as fat in my body. The doctor gives me a medication that pushes either my body to produce more insulin so that I can store it, or actually gives me insulin so that I can store it. But my body didn't seem to think there was place to store it. So where does my body store it? Well, this is where we start to see situations where we're storing fat in places fat is not supposed to be, like in our liver and our internal organs. And we start to see that the sugar is affecting our system because it's not supposed to be there. So we end up with extremities that are having problems with circulation, and we're having problems with our eyes. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I've lived through enough family members, friends, going through this issue and having had conversations with my own doctor about what possibly could happen in my future, and other family members learning what was happening and the reason for what's happening in their life. I'm not a doctor, but what I'm suggesting to you is that if I don't understand the mechanism of what's happening here, I won't be able to do the things to help myself. And at the end of the day, what I need to understand is if excess sugar in my system is the reason that all these other things are going to happen, well, I have two options. I could continue to eat carbohydrates, which are found in grains. They are found in vegetables that are high starch, but they're also found in regular vegetables. I'm not going to lie. They are found in dairy. They are found in nuts and seeds. So I could continue to consume large amounts of carbohydrates, knowing that there's a possibility that at some point my body will no longer be able to put the carbs away, and I will therefore have to go on medication to put the carbs away. But that's going to lead to metabolic issues. Or before that happens to me, or if it's already started to happen to me, I could take a decision to take the carbohydrates out of my life. And what happens if I actually decide to do that? If the carbohydrates are not there, what have we already learned? My body will decide to use another fuel source, which would be the fat that I'm eating and the fat on my body. The paradox about weight loss is that for so many years we've been told that fat causes us to gain fat, despite the fact that we've also known for many years, and again, not a doctor, but it's known and it's on record and we can check this. We've known for years that fat does not increase your insulin anywhere near as much as carbohydrates increases your insulin, and it is insulin that determines whether you're storing fat or not, because insulin is storing fat to save your body from being exposed to too much sugar. If you would like to decrease the amount of fat on your body, then the obvious answer would be to decrease the amount of carbohydrates you're ingesting so that your body can turn to being a fat-burning organism, and therefore not only fuel itself, but fuel itself with the fat that's already on board. Now, the other paradoxical thing that we often hear is that, well, if I were to not eat carbohydrates, then I wouldn't have any energy. But I just mentioned that we have two forms of energy sources, carbohydrates and fats. If you don't eat carbs, your body will use fats. Will it take it a little while to switch from using carbohydrates to fats? Yes, because for years you've been using carbohydrates for fuel. You've also been using fats for fuel, but just not as much. And also with the amount of carbohydrates that we tend to eat. Let's look at that for 5 seconds. When the food guide is telling us that we're allowed to have 45 to 65% of our calories per day coming from carbohydrates, and they're basing this on a 2,000 calorie diet, let me just tell you what that means. That means that 225 to 325 grams of carbs per day is what they're telling us to aim at. So again, if you consider that a low carb diet is 125 or less, the food guide is telling us to be 100 grams to almost 200 grams above what we know is going to be healthy for us. Well, what we now know is going to be healthy for us. So what's going to happen with all that sugar, right? My body can only manage having 1 teaspoon in my blood system at any given moment in time. Otherwise, I'm becoming toxic. If I eat 225 grams on the low end, that's 45% of my calories from carbohydrates, what's my body going to do with that? Well, it has to shuttle it into fat stores because that's what it does to keep me safe. My body will not let me kill myself without a fight. So to keep me safe, if I eat all of those carbs, it's going to throw it into fat cells to keep it out of my blood because it's toxic in my blood. 225 grams of carbohydrates in a day, that's 45 teaspoons of sugar. Whether you're getting that from rice, getting it from potatoes, whether you're getting it from cookies, that's 45 teaspoons of sugar. I question whether any of you watching this video would ever sit down with a bowl and eat 45 teaspoons of sugar. You probably wouldn't do it. A, that'd be gross. But B, you just know better. You know not to do that. Yet, they're saying that that's what is okay to ingest in a day hidden in foods. Because it seems hidden. Because we don't think about a piece of bread as having 15 grams of carbs, even though it does. We don't think about a potato of having a small potato of having 30 grams of carbs, but it does. So we don't think about an apple having 10 to 15 grams of carbs, but it does. We need to start allowing ourselves to recognize that there are carbohydrates in a lot of the foods that we've been eating. There's carbohydrates in a lot of the foods that we've been told are healthy. On some level, they're healthy in small portions, but then we also have to look at that means that if I've had that, I can't have any other carbs pretty much for the day. Or I need to fit, how much of that can I fit in and still have a reasonable meal and not go over my carbs? And it's really difficult to do. Now, it's not impossible to do, and lots of people do it. But at the same time, you need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand that if I allow my insulin to get to that certain level where it starts to store, I am not going to lose weight. In a ketogenic lifestyle, that number is less than 50 grams of carbs. Now, for some people, it needs to be even less than that. For me, I chose to live my lifestyle at 20 grams or less. That was me. You might come into a ketogenic way of living and find that you can do 50. You might decide to do a low carb, high fat, which means that you can be under 125. Everybody's different. This is part of the reason that there's some people who can eat carbs and be thin. There's some people that can eat carbs, be thin, but have metabolic. There's some people that can eat carbs, be overweight, have metabolic, and there's some people who can have carbs, be overweight, and not have a metabolic problem. Everybody's different. But what I'm trying to put out there to you is that if you already recognize that you're having some kind of metabolic issue and you need to lose weight, or if you recognize that you don't have a metabolic issue but you'd like to lose weight, regardless, whichever one it is for you, understanding that how many carbs you eat determines if your insulin levels rise, which determines if you gain weight. A calorie is not just a calorie. If you're eating carbs, there's more likely a chance that you'll push yourself into fat storage than if you're eating fats for fuel. much less chance you push yourself into fat storage. At the same time, energy is energy, and if I overeat my energy, of course I'm going to either maintain or gain weight, because if I eat enough fat in my diet to fuel my day, I won't take any fat off my body. That's just the way this works. I won't have an insulin spike because I won't be trying to get sugar out of my system, but I still won't necessarily lose weight. But that's a whole other story. What's important to recognize here, and I'm saying that just because I don't want people to say, oh, you can gain weight from fat. I know that you can. But right now we're talking about this paradox that we've been told for years and years, that fat will make us gain weight and carbs will not, and it's not reality. Carbohydrates spike your insulin, and that's what causes us to gain weight. I hope that helped people to understand that carbohydrates are a main part of how we gained weight, how we've gotten to this point in our lives, but that you can change it if you understand what's happening. It's important for us to understand what we're doing if we're going to do it well. That's why you have a psychologist talking to you about weight gain, because I need you to understand what you're doing if you're going to do it well. Everything that we want to change in life starts with understanding how it's affecting me, what I can do to change what's affecting me, and how I can make sure that I fully do the best job I can at keeping myself healthy, whether it's mentally or physically, because the two connect and talk to each other and affect each other. If I don't feel good physically, there's a chance that I'll have a bad day. And if I have a bad day, there's a chance that it's going to affect my physiology. They go together. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, and I'll talk to you in the next video. I absolutely appreciate that you guys watched the video all the way to the end. This is a good opportunity for you to hit that subscribe button so that you'll see my upcoming videos. And I'd really love to know what you guys want to hear me talk about next. So put comments and questions and ideas for future videos in the comment section so that I can make videos that are going to be what you want to hear me talk about. If you liked my video today, please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. I can't wait to talk to you guys again, and I will see you in the next video.